Question 11C is about the wealth test. Of course, you don't know what wealth test is based on your textbook, right? So you haven't come across anything like that in your textbook. But the question has given you some examples of the assets which would be covered by the wealth test. The examples include the bank deposits, the real properties, the bonds, and also the stocks. And somehow, one examination skill that you must remember before your DSE is set, just like question with several sources, you need to refer to these assets one by one so that you get the reason why the aggregate output could be affected. And you need to respond to each of the assets if you could. Then let me tell you how to cope with this question now. So with these examination skills, first of all, I won't talk about the asset, but I will think about the overall impact of the wealth test first. And wealth test with the word wealth, then of course this will affect the wealth of the people. Say for example, if a person owns $10 million of wealth at the beginning, now the government charges 10% out of his wealth, then of course finally he will only have $9 million of wealth after paying the tax, and this will reduce the wealth of the people. And if the wealth is reduced, of course this will affect their consumption because they will think that they are poorer. They are actually poorer after paying the tax. The consumption actually decreases. You may also say that investment decreases if the businessmen they are poorer than before. And finally, there is a drop in the AD. So this is the overall impact using consumption to explain. And after investigating into the overall impact, then we may consider these examples one by one. First of all, maybe we consider the bank deposits. If the bank deposits are charged, say for example, you have $10 million in your bank account, then you have to pay 10% as the tax to the government, and finally you only have $9 million in your bank account. Then what the people will do? The people will of course withdraw from the bank. They will withdraw from the banks because they will be charged if they deposit some money to the bank, right? To avoid the tax, they will just withdraw from the banks and put the money maybe under their bed. Then they do not need to pay the wealth tax, right? And of course, if people withdraw from the bank, this will affect the money market. The money supply will decrease because of the credit contraction, and the interest rate will increase, leading to a drop in CNI and a drop in AD. This is another reason to explain why the aggregate output could decrease after the imposition of wealth tax. Then except the bank deposit, you may also think about, say for example, the bonds and the stocks. And then you may ask yourself, why the firms issue bonds and stocks at the beginning? Why they issue bonds and stocks? The firms issue bonds and stocks because they want to raise the capital to expand their company, to expand their business, right? And then now, if you purchase the bonds and the stocks, then you have to pay tax to the government. Then what will the investor do? The investor won't purchase the bonds and the stocks to avoid the tax, right? Fewer people will purchase the bonds and the stocks. And that's why if no one purchases the bonds and the stocks, then of course the firm cannot raise the capital to expand their business, and the firm's ability to raise capital will decrease. And this one, of course, will affect the investment because if the firms expand their business by, say, for example, opening new factories, new branches, this is a type of investment, right? If they don't have the capital, they can't do so, and the investment will be reduced and the AD will be reduced. And this is something you can talk about for the bonds and also the stocks. And after analyzing these perfect answers here, let me talk about some of the mistakes I find from your mock practice. They are incorrect or imperfect. For the first mistake, some of you mentioned that with the wealth test, the disposable income decreases and that's why the consumption decreases and so on and so forth. A drop in the consumption is pretty good, so I have mentioned something like that here, but you can see that the reason is totally different. I have used a reduction in wealth to explain why consumption decreases, but lots are decreasing the income. Why? Because when do the people need to pay the wealth tax? When the people earn money or when the people own a certain type of asset. When they own the money, when they own the asset, they have to pay the wealth tax rather than when they earn the money, right? And that's why this will not affect their income. They can earn as much as before, right? But if they have some money, they own some assets, they have to pay the tax. This don't affect their income. They can earn the same salaries as before. They can earn the same dividend, the same interest as before, the same rental income as before from the real properties. They can have the same income as before. But because of the asset they own, they have to pay some tax to the government, and they become poorer because they have a smaller amount of wealth, and this will affect wealth rather than their income. This is mistake one. Mistake two, some of you also know that fewer people would invest in the bonds and stocks, and you may think that this because of the reduction in the investment, then we have a reduction in the investment. This is totally incorrect. Why? Because as you have learned in Form 5, you know that when people buy the bonds or the stocks, would this be counted as investment in the GDP? This is not counted. Why this is not counted? Because there is no production at all. Because there is no production. This is only a transfer of ownership from one person to another person. If a certain person purchases the bonds or stocks from another person, this is only a transfer of ownership, right? There is no current production. And then from that sense, we can't just say that because fewer people buy the bonds and stocks and that's why investment decreases. You need to explain a little bit, because fewer people buy, and that's why the firms couldn't raise the capital, and that's why they won't expand their business and the investment decreases. You have to explain in this way. You can't directly come from this point to this conclusion. This is not correct.